This conference was previously named KetoCon, was known as KetoCon, and was kind of in that kind of direction. Robert Schweitzer is the host of the show. She did a wonderful job, in my opinion, of hosting this show as well. I think she did an awesome conference. Decided to change the name to Hack Your Health.
But going through, the event space and walking around, it did seem very focused on this cold plunge and red light therapy, which is all good things.
If you've been watching, you know that I take my ingredients very seriously, but there are 3 companies that I have found that I absolutely love. Check the description for discount codes.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Boundless Body Radio. I'm your host, Casey Ruff, and today we have a very special episode with a few of my friends, and we are going to review the recent Hack Your Health conference that we all went to. So I am introducing now Tony Pascola, James Lehman, and our new friend, Adrian Gledhill. Thank you guys so very much for being here today.
Oh, the pleasure's all mine, Casey, and it's great to see Tony and Adrian again, and of course yourself. This is awesome, man. What a great thing to do. I'm really looking forward to the conversation.
I am as well. How about you, Tony?
Yeah, I'm glad to see everybody again, and appreciate you inviting us all onto your podcast today.
And we all made a new friend in Adrian. So Adrian, welcome onto the show.
Hi, thanks for having me, guys. It was so great to meet you guys, have dinner together, and now we get to do this. It's awesome.
So let me just get everybody introduced. Tony Pascola is a returning guest on our show. Be sure to check out Tony's appearances on episodes 369 and 597 of Boundless Body Radio. Tony Pascola is a physical education teacher, sport coach, Strong First kettlebell instructor, and personal trainer, and like me, is a carnivore fasting coach at Rivero, a company focused on helping people successfully implement a carnivore diet. He's also the host of the very successful Primal Foundations podcast, where I was honored enough to be hosted as the very first guest. Luckily, he has found much better people to host since then. He's most active on Instagram at Tony_Primal Foundations. Tony, it's an honor to have you back.
Thanks for having me back. And it's you number 1 episode, man. You can't beat that.
Oh, man. So I get the strategy, like start out like bottom of the barrel, and then every episode from there just builds and builds and builds. It gets better and better. Good strategy. James Lehman is also a returning guest on our show. Also to mention, he was also certified as a carnivore and fasting coach at Rivero. None of us are active coaches on there anymore, but just wanted to point that out as well. Be sure to check out James's first appearances in episode 355 and 595 of Boundless Body Radio. James Lehman is a 51-year-old who was born, lives, and works in the beautiful island of Bermuda. As a vegetarian and vegan, James's health declined so much that he had multiple hospitalizations, autoimmune issues, anxiety, depression, amongst many other health problems. From listening to podcasts, reading books, and discovering the keto and carnivore diets, James has regained his health, and through that process has found happiness and purpose in sharing his experiences. You can find James on his Instagram page at The Carnivorist, which is officially the coolest name ever, and his fantastically successful podcast at the aptly named The Carnivorist Chats. James, welcome back.
Casey, so great to be back, and I miss you guys already. It was so great hanging out in Austin with you and Adrian. Again, I know we met the year prior, and of course, Casey, we got to hang out, but having Tony along this time was super special. So I'm very grateful to be here, and of course, I've hosted you once already in my first season. I think it was episode 5, and I already showed you my wish list on getting you back this season. So I'm looking forward to that chat too.
Oh, that's awesome. I got to sit there and not only see the wish list, but the notes that you take for all of your episodes. I thought I did my homework. Dude, multiple notebook pages full of notes. I was blown away.
Oh, man, I'm telling you, I really like to. And Casey, I learned from the best, and I learned from you, man. And such a credit to you. And yeah, I really love your podcast. Always have. You were my inspiration getting to start mine. And I know Tony's gone along this road now, and Adrian too. So we're all following in your footsteps, man. So great job as always.
Thank you so much for the kind words. I really appreciate it, man. Adrian, our new friend, Adrian Gledhill, is a future guest on Boundless Body Radio, so be on the lookout for her full episode coming soon. Adrian's insane story includes a life of battling weight gain and obesity, being a contestant on The Biggest Loser, wow, giving birth to 5 babies, having weight loss surgery, suffering with multiple chronic conditions, and finally finding some healing with the carnivore diet. Her full episode promises to be epic, and I was so grateful to meet my new friend at the recent Hack Your Health convention in Austin, Texas. You can find Adrian on Instagram at Adrian K. Gledhill, and on YouTube also at Adrian K. Gledhill. Adrian, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. That was epic. I can't wait to have all you guys on my brand new show. I'm on like episode 3. I know you're on episode like 3000, but we're getting there.
That's awesome. You posted a clip on Instagram the other day that I saw that was a clip taken from the Biggest Loser contest. You were in your early 20s, coming from North Dakota, which ironically is where I was born. I don't know if you knew that or not, but I was born in Bismarck. Only spent like a year and a half there. But that was quite crazy to look back at you and to see your state of health and the branding around the Biggest Loser. Like, how do you look back on that experience?
When I saw that, because I actually purposely don't watch that, it brought tears to my eyes. You even can hear it in my voice, like how inflamed I was and how sad I was. And I'm just so grateful to have finally found something that works. And I can see it working for so many other people. So I'm just really grateful.
That's really amazing. And again, knowing you in person, I wouldn't have guessed that you were ever overweight a day in your life. So what a journey you've had. And I can't wait to capture that full journey on our show. And I think I can speak for everybody else here that we would be absolutely honored to be on your show as well. So looking forward to that.
Awesome.
Well, we are here today to talk about the recent conference. I thought it would be fun. Maybe, James, this was your idea and I stole it. But anyway, I thought it would be fun to get everybody together and discuss the event. I have no agenda. I didn't take any notes. I just thought it would be fun to discuss how it was like, what everybody thought about it. The first question I want to ask you guys is about the naming of the conference. And so this conference was previously named KetoCon, was known as KetoCon, and was kind of in that kind of direction. Robert Schweitzer is the host of the show. She did a wonderful job, in my opinion, of hosting this show as well. I think she did an awesome conference. Decided to change the name to Hack Your Health rather than continue with the KetoCon name. And so I'm just curious, you guys, what do you think? Adrian, what do you think about the name change from KetoCon to Hack Your Health?
Are we allowed to be honest? I don't like the idea of hacking my health. I guess, because I don't want any more gimmicks, and I know some people are going to be like, well, you eat sardines. Isn't that a gimmick? I don't think that's a gimmick. I think there's different, but I guess we're just adding modalities to better health, feeling better. And so I get where they're going with that. I also like that they took out like a certain way of eating out of the title, because there's a whole spectrum and we're maybe excluding people by naming it something that's a type of diet. So I'm glad that it is much more broad now. What do you think, James?
That's an excellent point, Adrian. I was just thinking myself about how a title can be confining in so many ways. And I agree with you. We're all about living better, feeling better. I'm not so sure I'm into hacking. I've been down that road before when I was trying to figure out my way out of all my illnesses on the vegan diet. And I was trying everything except literally the simplest thing, which was changing what I put into my mouth. So I understand that there's some nuances around it. I will be honest as we go along in our conversation and say that so many of the things are geared towards that longevity area. And let's face it, we're all trying to live as long as possible, but so many of these things are, like I say, Dr. Baker calls it the longevity racket. And sometimes that's a little harsh, but let's be honest here, many of them are. And yeah, it's interesting. I wish they kind of had geared it towards the maybe, I don't know. I guess I'm struggling to find out where they were headed in their mind with the name change. Maybe Tony has an idea, or Casey. I'm not sure, but yeah, I agree with you, Adrian. I'm not as big of a fan as the name, as the simplicity of KetoCon. We knew what we were getting into there. Hack Your Health. It opens up more possibilities. Whether that's good or bad remains to be determined. We'll discuss further for sure.
Yeah, this was my first rodeo, so I didn't see it when it was KetoCon, so I wasn't too sure what the differences are. But again, I remember when they did make the name change. But going through, the event space and walking around, it did seem very focused on this cold plunge and red light therapy, which is all good things. But in my eyes, that's supplemental to what we should be doing and getting back to basics, and eating right and exercising should be at the forefront, and not kind of focus on like, what's the shortcut way to do this? Well, there is no shortcut way. So I think James said it as well, as like the whole hack your thing. Like, I'm not into hacking. Like, I can do things and make my life more efficient. Great. But this stuff it's not a 1 week, 2 week thing. This is a lifetime. We have a lifetime of getting healthy and getting better and getting stronger and, metabolically healthy. And this isn't you can't hack your way in 2 weeks. Like, this is a long, long journey.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate all of your insights. I agree. I'm really mixed about the whole thing. You're right, Tony. Like, you're walking around the exhibition hall and you're looking at saunas and cold plunges, and light therapies and IV drips and all these things like supplements. Like I use a lot of those things. Like I have a sauna. I'm in my sauna every single night. Like I try to get cold showers and cold plunges where I can. And like I'm sitting on my grounding pad. You know what I mean? Like I do a lot of these things, but I guess I agree with you that like the overall concept of like hacking your way to health is tricky. Again, knowing that all of those things can help us, and I use those things and leverage those things as well. I guess I just don't love the idea of like, oh, we can just take shortcuts to health when it's like all of you kind of alluded to, like it really is a lifestyle change in eating properly that needs to kind of be the driver of health. Is that a good way to say that, I guess?
I think so. I think that's it in a nutshell, Casey. That again, just to harken back to what I went through, is I tried it all. I did the red light therapy. I still do sauna. I still do cold plunges. But foundation for me, and still continues to be, was, and you saw, ironically today, I took a picture of my new weighted vest, is movement and nutrition. That's where I start. Everything else, in the terms of the pyramid, it falls lower on the scale. They're all an important part, but I wish the title had been more all-encompassing and focusing on what the pillars of health are, rather than hacking and the little sort of, as you said, the supplemental things, Tony. And I mean, what do you think, Adrian? Am I going down the wrong rabbit hole here? Or do you agree?
When I look at some of this stuff, I do add some of the things, like I love the sauna. I've had vitamin drips as I'm not feeling good. These things are great, but if we're doing these things all the time, it's making our life so complicated instead of just eating right, exercising, getting sunlight, and breathing good air. I think those are just most important. And the rest of it can get so busy and so expensive. And it's like we're all just looking for something to spend our money on sometimes, but really we just got to stick to the basics. And I don't know how you would make that exciting in a conference, really, but other than the speakers did a great job. A lot of the speakers did a great job of instilling those exact things. What do you think, Tony?
I think you kind of hit a little bit on a point of like it gets really expensive, and I think there's this a very big marketing plan for these huge, like these are corporations that can invest into the marketing and get influencers. It's like red light therapy, great, but I can also get some sunlight. That's free. I could these different mats, which are great. I can go outside and just be on the grass barefoot. And again, they're not super, it's not super sexy and super cool to like, hey, I'm sitting outside with barefoot, or I'm just getting some sunlight. So I think there's things that we can do. Cold plunges, fantastic. I don't use them enough. I don't have one with me, but I'll take a cold shower, just turn that sucker really cold, and then I get something. But there's people that are going to lengths because they feel they need it versus an addition. And I think because they see it on Instagram and they see these influencers and they're doing cold plunges and red light therapy, like I have to get these things. Like I don't think so. I think you can get by for free.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that input from all you guys. You mentioned the speakers, which was quite interesting. When the conference first came up and I saw the list of speakers, it was interesting to even consider a health conference that had maybe like a quarter of the people that I had known or heard about, and the other, 3/4 of people I had no idea who they were. They were experts in other things that, kind of get to the kind of what we're talking about, almost like the fringe of health. Maybe they were presenting on EMFs and red lights and things like that. The thing that tipped me over to even going to this was really seeing that all of you guys and all my other friends, the attendees, were going to go. And that is what influenced my decision more. And the more and more I talked to other attendees of the show, that seemed to be quite consistent. So was that your experience as well? Adrian, let's start with you.
100%. I went for the people. Honestly, I didn't even go to the speakers.
I recently started a new job. I'm lucky in that I had some other business to attend to in Austin early on, so I got that taken care of, and then happenstance was able to attend this year. But for me, I browsed the speaking list and I was like, okay, this should be all right. I mean, many of the folks we heard in the previous year, seeing Dr. Chafee in person was a big reason. I was like, having interviewed him, I really wanted to catch up with him in person again, outside of him being on the panel, which I didn't end up getting to see him anyway because it was on the last day. But for the most part, I was just mostly excited to catch up with Casey, see Tony. I knew Tony was going to be there for the first time. I had seen that Jake, who we all met, Jake Thomas, was going to be there. But yeah, it was really interesting this year. And we'll as we get further along in the conversations, I noticed a definite, and Casey, sorry to steal the questions here from you, man, but I noticed a definite drop in the amount of carnivores from last year. I think Well, no, let me preface that by saying the people that attended last year, Adrian and Casey, that we didn't get to see this year, there was a whole bunch of other people. And I think when we get onto the actual presenters, the carnivore topics were packed like to the gills. It was so interesting to see, like the carnivore panel, there was standing room only. And then, the fasting one, standing room only again. So it was really interesting to see. I don't know, Casey, sorry to steal your thunder. What are your thoughts? And Tony as well.
Same. It's the same trend we noticed last year. Like they presented mostly nutrition stuff. This year it was like kind of 50-50. Nutrition was definitely a big topic. And as we've all talked about, like it's cool that it opened it up to lots of different ways of eating. But the two things that I noticed that were driving the most were anything carnivore. Like you said, James, packed houses, good presentations. The panel, James, the carnivore panel that you ended up missing was very, very good. But at 50 minutes, I mean, there's still a long line of people that wanted to ask questions, and they were like passing the mic back and forth, so everybody was giving their input, and it just took like a long time, but it was very, very good. And yeah, anything carnivore, any book signings that were carnivore, Sean Baker and Dr. Chafee, like when did you ever see them hanging out with not like 10 people around them at all time? Like they were always busy. So I thought that was very interesting. And then the other thing that I thought was really driving a lot of the attention was food addiction. They did a food addiction panel that was same, just kind of packed as far as like the people that decided to go there. So that is kind of what I noticed. Same kind of trend. I mean, Tony, this was your very first one, so you didn't really know kind of what to expect as far as like, are you going to every presentation? Like at Hack Your Health, you kind of have to choose. There's always something going on in two or three or four different spots. You have to choose where you're going to go. What did you think of that and the format and some of the presentations that you checked out?
So most of them were great. I would say the overarching of the presentations, it was good. Me and you actually were in one of them, and it was more of like a coaching one. And as soon as we got in there, within 5 seconds, I looked at you, you look at me, and we're like, they're just trying to sell us something. And we just got up and we went somewhere else. And I had seen that, and I told you, like I was at a teaching conference earlier this year. And I'm like, man, those guys look familiar. I know them. And they were trying to sell something, a program that they sell to high schools for health classes, doing the same for us and on the coaching side. So there was that stuff, which I didn't appreciate. Like that kind of wasted the time a little bit. But when we got down to some of the panels, right, the carnivore panels were good. Some of the stuff is things that we've heard a bunch. So some of it was a little repetitive, but then you had like those nuggets of really good questions that was like, oh, wow, I didn't think of that, or that's really great information. And you mentioned it already. And I think we all can kind of agree that those of us that were in there is like, the food panel or the food addiction panel was fantastic. It was fantastic. They just allotted a lot of this time. They were like they were giving them, you have 5 minutes, you have 4 minutes, you have 2 minutes, and they're wrapping that thing up super quick because I know they got to get other presenters in there or what have you. But man, if we could have spent another half hour, 45 minutes just in there and talking shop with each other and learning from each other, I would have liked that a little bit more than, oh, that's the time, everybody get out.
I really appreciate that. Let's go around the horn and talk about favorite, like, the presentations or panels that you really liked. As far as presentations, Adrian, it doesn't sound like you went to many. Did you go to any of the presentations? Like, did any like jump out at you?
I went to the food addiction one and I actually asked a question.
Which was a great question. That was a cool moment, actually.
I was so emotional. I mean, but I think as we're looking at what you're just talking about, people are onto it. The problem here is, and whether people want to admit it or not, it's your relationship with your food and the food that you're eating. Are you eating enough protein from animal sources? And are you dealing with your relationship with food? And so I thought that one was pretty powerful. And I thought she was amazing. And I was like, what is Sykes doing up there? But as he was giving answers, I thought some of his answers were the best on the whole panel. So yeah, I didn't sit through too many because I was like one of the first ones I went to was this attorney one, and the whole thing was trying to sell me something. And so I just felt like, so I was kind of, I was there for the people. But how about you, James? What was your favorite one that you went to?
Adrian, I'm glad we're on this subject. I, like you, did not attend as many of the presentations as the past year, but I did go to the Regen agricultural panel. I went to the carnivore panel, of course. I went to support Chef James Barry in both of his presentations. And while we're on that topic, I don't know about you guys, and this is just kind of a side note. They were kind of presentations. I loved the live cooking this year. I thought Courtney Luna did a great job. I thought Chef James Barry did a great job. It was really lively out there and a lot of fun. And I got to taste Courtney's food, which was great. So I really enjoyed those and attended those. Casey, you and I, of course, attended Zane Griggs's presentation, and I'll put a little pin in that. I have a couple of comments on that we both noticed. But for me, do you know, honestly, and I'm a little bit biased because he's a dear friend of mine too. Just like if any of you were presenting, I would say they were my favorite. But Chris Bates, I know the food addiction one was going on next door, but Chris Bates's presentation was one of my favorites. He was such a dynamic presenter. His was entitled, please bear with me, Why Experimental Philosophy Serves You Better Than Diet Dogma. It was basically figuring out what works best for you and not listening to all the noise that we talked about. And he did such a phenomenal job, and I'm so proud of him because it was really, you know, he spent a lot of time preparing for it, and you can tell. But yeah, for sure, that was my favorite. And I'll pass the baton over to Tony and see what his favorites were.
Yeah, I really wanted to go that Chris Bates one. I feel like it was at the same time as something else. And again, like you said, Casey, you got to choose wherever you're going. I would say the probably close to Adrian's answer is that the food addiction panel. And when Robert Sykes was up there, you getting two very different perspectives, where one is, it is a food addiction panel, and some are talking about people that, you know, really have a struggle relationship with food, and then using food for different performances, you know, because Robert Sykes is a bodybuilder, right? He's talking about how he loses weight, but then how he puts the weight back on, and that hits different people in the room. And I think that some people were getting kind of emotional from it. And I was sitting back just listening to all the questions, and I was like, wow, like this is such a good panel. So I would say the food addiction one was really good. Probably second would be the carnivore panel, because you're never going to see all those heavy hitters up there at one time. So that was really great. What about you, Casey?
Yeah, same thing. I remember we were at Low Carb Denver in 2023, and it was a panel of like all of these cardiologists. And Amy Berger commented to me like, we should not allow all those people to be on the same stage at the same time. Like if the stage collapses and all of them die, it's like having the president, the vice president in the same spot. Like it's really bad. Yeah, I think the food addiction panel was probably my favorite as well. We did have a cool moment with Chris Bates where Tony and I were sat down and we were waiting for the speaker, and the speaker for whatever reason couldn't show up. And so Chris Bates you just like impromptu showed up and went to the stage and just took questions. It was awesome. And I'm like, James is not here. I got to go find him. And so I ran downstairs. I did a loop through the entire conference, like up and down and up and down and up and down the list of all the vendors. James is just chilling. I guess he heard about it, was there like 2 seconds after I left, just hanging out in my spot. Like, yeah, man, thanks for the extra steps, I guess.
I was texting Casey, James is here. Come on, come back. He's like, all right, Roger that.
From the far end of the conference.
Yeah, thank you guys. That was great. I caught, you know, most of that impromptu Q&A, and there were some really interesting questions there that were coming forward, especially the people that, Casey, you'll recall the gentleman that had type 2 diabetes. And I thought Chris, because of, again, the presentation that he was about to make, he was well equipped to answer those nuanced questions, especially for people that had these challenges. And that will harken back to my comment about Zane Griggs, and that gentleman with the type 2 diabetes was also in there asking these questions. And the nuance around all of this, and the nuance around diet, and the dogma that can creep in. And I've often talked about that can be dogma that creeps in the carnivore space. I've seen it myself. We've all seen it. And just how individualistic this whole process is in terms of healing and getting to where we need to be, isn't it, Casey?
Yeah. You guys have already mentioned Robert Sykes. Let me tell you why I love Robert Sykes. Robert Sykes will give you honest answers. He's very funny, but he's also very practical. He'll tell you what he thinks about stuff. And again, in a very practical way. How many times did you guys ever hear, as I write about in my new program, or if you go to my website and sign up, like he does have a new program that's coming out like right now that he's trying to promote. Did he say one single time anything about getting the information from the program, or was he just more than willing to offer information? I think all of us have attended those carnivore panels, and there was somebody there who had a new program that probably said 17 times, well, as I talked about in my new program, like we get it. you got a new program and that's how you make your money. We understand, but like Robert does it in a way that he doesn't have to say like, oh, check out my new program to get the answers. He's just there to give his information. That's just, I love that dude.
Same, Casey. And I didn't get the privilege of hearing him again live, but I certainly heard him last year, both on the entrepreneur panel and then another discussion that I had with him offline. And the guy's just so practical in everything that he does. And he's been there. He's done that. He started his own very successful business. He's done all the diets. He knows what to do. And yeah, I really appreciate his point of view. Hoping to get him on the podcast at some point in the near future too.
Can I add, I loved on the fasting and feasting that they gave some success stories and we got to see Todd and Lindy and some of these other people. And it was just so phenomenal to get to see them in real life and say, listen, I gained and lost. Todd said he gained and lost 300 pounds multiple times and he's finally lost weight and kept it off and is continuing to go down. And it's those success stories that's what I'm there for too, is to meet the people and to see the other success stories and your heart just gets full and you're just like, oh, this is amazing stuff. And it like fills you up to just keep on going.
I know
That's such a
that
great point.
I know that James mentioned like he was looking forward to Anthony Chafee meeting him. He's hosting him on the podcast. But Adrian, who besides the three of us, obviously, but who was there that you saw and you were like, I need to meet this person, or you were glad to meet?
My life is now complete because I got to meet Dr. Boz and I got to ask her questions. I know that this isn't like, I love Stacy from Keto in Court. I watch her like TV. She posts like 35 stories a day. I love her. And then Maria Emmerich. How about you guys? How about you, Casey?
Yeah, same. I mean, getting to meet, Maria and Craig in person after hosting them on the show was really great. It's funny because it's cool to like meet your heroes and to stand next to Dr. Chafee. I've hung out with him and done lunch with him before, and he's such a cool guy. But like, just to be shoulder to shoulder with him watching a presentation is super cool, and to talk to his girlfriend. But like, frankly, it's like meeting you. It's like people like you, and again, those inspiring stories. How many people did we meet that just had such cool stories? And like, yeah, it's awesome to host your heroes and then meet your heroes. And Dr. Philip Ovadia, got to meet him in person for the first time, and like, it's awesome. But to me, it's also like kind of more cool to meet all the people like on the ground who are kind of going through it. James, thoughts?
Man, I got to tell you, Casey, last year I got to meet one of my big heroes who wasn't there, and I'll talk about that in a second. But this year, for sure, I got to meet another one of my heroes, this guy from Chicago called Tony Pascola. The guy is amazing. And I went all the way to KetoCon, and all I got was this T-shirt.
Nice.
I'm telling you, man. No, I'm being serious, man. And like we're saying, I jest, but seeing you guys again in person was the highlight for me this year. I mean, obviously, Dr. Chafee was great to catch up with him. He's such a stellar presenter, but I just like to touch on this subject for a second. It's a sensitive subject, but I think it needs to be talked about a little bit as we get here. And we're talking about how Robert just gives it to you straight, and I'm going to give it to you straight. It was interesting to me that the two people last year, Adrian and Casey, that called out the keto space on stage were not there this year. I'm just putting that out there. And it was also interesting to me that the carnivore people didn't have any really booths besides Peterson Farms. I mean, we remember Carnivore Snacks and Carnivore Bar being there last year, and they were not both there. I was disappointed to see that. I know that Carnivore Snacks has been through a heck of a time recently with some legal stuff, so I wasn't surprised. I was sorry that Philip Meese couldn't make it this year, but the two presenters, it was disappointing to me. And that person I was talking about from last year, who was my hero, is of course Sally Norton. And Sally got up on stage and said, listen, a lot of these keto treats are filled with stuff that are potentially harmful for you. Not only potentially a lot of sugar, but oxalates in general. I mean, this is just, it is. Almond flours, almond products, nut butters, they're all in the keto treats. And sadly, she wasn't there. And of course, we all remember Dr. Berry and him not stating the same. But yeah, it was just an interesting space. I mean, Adrian, what are your thoughts? And Casey, I know, Tony, you weren't there last year.
You want to go first, Casey?
I agree with you. I have so much respect for people like Ken Berry. Vinnie Tortorich has done it in the past and has not been invited back. Sally Norton did it last year, barefoot, by the way, on stage, which was just so savage. To say, like, look over at that other end of the room where all the vendors are, and a lot of that stuff is a way for people to make a buck. And I get it. Like, I recommend some of that stuff, and I in a pinch, people can use that, or they can use keto bricks, for example, as a way to get some fat and get away from sugary stuff. And so I appreciate the utility of all that. But again, it's so savage to get on stage and say, like, look, a lot of these things are not that great for you. You should, kind of eat real food. And so, yeah, I really respect it. It's a bummer that they don't get invited back when they do that from the way that it sounds, but it was, yeah, very much less of the, the carnivore kind of vendors, even though, again, all the interest that I saw, it was definitely in the carnivore direction. I didn't see lines for saunas and cold plunges and supplements and probiotics and IVs. I saw lines for carnivore stuff. You know what I mean? Tony, again, hard to reference, but as you're hearing that, what do you think about that?
I mean, I would love to see Sally Norton. I would love to see Ken Berry. And the fact that, I'm traveling to a place in a space where we have to explore all of these different options and different opinions and different diets and different modalities of fitness and what have you. And it kind of stinks because as like a consumer of the convention, right, I'm going there because of whatever, people's opinions aren't landing the right way, or people don't like somebody or what they said, they're not allowed back. So now I, as a consumer of the convention, I'm not able to see them. So again, I want to see Sally Norton. I want to see, listen to her talk, and Ken Berry. But if they didn't get invited back, I don't have that opportunity.
Yeah,
So
really good point.
I have two things. Number one, I want to thank the people who were brave enough to come back despite not agreeing with certain things. Like a great one is Judy Cho, because last year there was a carnivore panel and they kept saying, like, if carnivore is not working for you, you just got to carnivore harder. And Judy's trying to spread the message that sometimes it's environmental, sometimes it's something else. And they didn't spread that message last year. So she came back this year, even though it was tough, and continued to spread the message. So I appreciate anybody who's continuing to come back and just keep standing up if they're still invited. And then number two, I do wish they would be more strict with what they allow in there. I don't like that those keto treats are in there. That's why keto doesn't work for me, because of the almond flour cookies, because of the caramels, because of that stuff. That's the stuff that triggers tons of people. And I'd wish that it wasn't even in there, because ultimately that's kind of the downfall of the entire keto diet, is those things right there. And I also wish, if they're listening, next year in the little cafeteria area, they should have some beef. This year they had disgusting looking chicken, and the food over there looked horrible. I bet they didn't sell like any of it. Thank God for Peterson's and Holy Cow Beef and across the street, Blacks. And yeah. What did you guys think of the products? Was there anything? I want to bring up one more product. I heard people complaining about Knick Knack. Do you guys know about it?
No.
I use it.
Thank you. Me too. Because it can really help some brain things, and it can really help people with long haulers. That's why I take a micro dose, and I've looked into this, and I thought it was awesome they were there. I've heard other people complaining, why the heck is nicotine here? Well, if you look into nicotine, the story is a little different. But go ahead, Tony, tell me, what do you take it for, and what are your thoughts on Knick Knack?
I would say I for a couple different reasons. We literally passed by the Knick Knack booth, and I was talking to Casey. I don't know if James, you were next to us, but I looked at Casey because Casey was a hockey player. I'm like, did you ever like chew back in the day? Because hockey players are like notorious for chewing tobacco. And he's like, no, not really. He's like, you? I'm like, yeah, bad. I used to like dip tobacco high school all the way till I was outside of college, like a very long time. And that was just like a bad habit. And that was just like a lot of athletes did it. And I don't know why. It just became a bad habit for me. And I try to get off of that. And then for me, like it's twofold, right? If I want that, if I go to a ball game or I go somewhere and it's just like my buddies are throwing in lips of tobacco and I'm just kind of like, I really don't want to do that. This is like a great alternative because I'm like throwing something in. It's kind of going through that motion. It's familiar. So there's that one aspect of it, like having a non-alcoholic beer. Like you don't want to drink, but I'm going to have a non-alcoholic beer and I'm going to simulate that stimulus of like drinking with friends. So that's like one piece of it. But two, it's also the cognitive function. I really believe if I like throw like, again, a 6 milligram, a 3 milligram of nicotine, there is a little bit of a cognitive function to it, and I feel a little bit more alert. I'm not preaching it to everybody, like, you have to be deconnected. No, like, but if that's something that you want to self explore, like, and see if you like the differences or not, great. If not, great. But yeah, it seems like, yeah, a lot of people are like, why is there, like, because they think it was tobacco. I think that's another piece of, like, they thought it was like chewing tobacco. Like, why is chewing tobacco at Hack Your Health?
Yeah, interesting. Really good point. Okay, James, you brought something up. We put a pin in it. Let's talk about the Zane Griggs presentation. Tony, I don't even think you were there yet. Adrian, I don't think you caught that one. So James can kind of explain what happened, how it went. I thought the presentation was very good. We talked about kind of some of the pros and cons of the presentation. So James, take it away. Like, tell us about that presentation and what you thought.
Yeah, absolutely, Casey. But let me just go back a little, and I want to just clarify something before. I don't know for sure that Sally and Dr. Berry were not invited. I just thought it was interesting that they were not there. I'd also like to preface what I'm saying as well, is that I'm very grateful to Robin and the Hack Your Health KetoCon organizers for putting on an event like this, because it allows us to come together. It allows all of us, even if we don't necessarily agree with the presentations, as people with like-minded ideas and friendships, to come together in a central place. Now, I say that all to say is that, in my opinion, this Hack Your Health, it encompasses a lot of different things, and I think that's why they gave it the title. And Casey, I'll get to Zane Griggs in a second. I apologize, I'm going on a tangent, but it all is related. I think they need to really make a decision on what direction they're headed, because it was clear to all of us, I think Tony, Adrian, and yourself, Casey, will agree that, and we've already talked about it, that the carnivore panels, everything else was the most popular, and they were even the most popular last year. I'm not saying the whole event has got to be carnivore. Maybe there are more carnivore-centered presentations. Maybe there are more breakout rooms with carnivores, because it's clearly what people want. Now, in relation to Zane's presentation, Casey, I think you and I both looked at one another, as you did in Tony, and you're in the presentation where you're both like, yeah, there's an amount of confusion when you attend an event like this, and there's so many conflicting presentations on what is right for the person. And we're lucky enough that we host our own podcast. We've had the privilege of talking to people that are in the know. We've made our own decisions, and we are getting ourselves into a healthy state. I really felt for the person that was struggling, that came to that conference and would go to one presentation, hear one thing, and then drop in another presentation and be told something completely different. And I thought Zane did a great job. He had some really interesting points. And I also disagreed with some of the things that he was saying. And then we had a gentleman with type 2 diabetes getting up saying, well, I was just in another presentation where I was told I shouldn't go near any of this stuff as a carnivore to eliminate it, that would basically ameliorate or get rid of my type 2 diabetes. But then Zane is saying, no, 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 you need carbohydrates in your diet. You've got to have a certain amount. These are the things, when, as a carnivore, and not listen to the other panel, we're told, no, carbohydrates aren't essential. You don't really need them. This is what you need to heal, insulin resistance and help heal your type 2 diabetes. Those are my thoughts. And again, that was a very long-winded way, but Tony, Adrian, welcome your guys' thoughts on this. And please tell me if I'm really off base here.
No, that's good. Let me provide a little bit of context before we get your answers. So the talk was called, the book that he wrote with Dr. Berry was called Kicking Ass After 50. Zane is, dude, a brick shithouse. This guy is so ripped, super strong. And he's talking about like optimizing muscle building and talking about like, again, he's not promoting high carbohydrate, but having carbohydrates on workout times to really maximize building muscle. So again, like if you are looking to maximize muscle and you're metabolically healthy, the words he's saying, they all really like ring true. Like I don't think he was wrong about anything, but then I look around the room and I say, well, okay, there's like maybe like 5 or 6 metabolically healthy people in here. So it's like James said, it's a little confusing for the average consumer. And when the guy with type 2 diabetes asked this question, he's like, well, I don't think I should have carbohydrates because I'm type 2 diabetic. And Zane goes, no, take care of your diabetes first. Like, don't worry about the carbohydrate stuff. It's just, again, when you're talking about the people that want to maximize and optimize, and it's just such a small part of the presentation, at least of the people who were there, I think people got a little bit confused. So, okay, so what do you guys think? Adrian, let's hear your opinion first.
Okay, I've come up with what they should call this. I think that I'm going to steal Tony here. I think they should rename this the Primal Health Conference. And we should we should focus on, some of these modalities can still be there because, like the red light therapy, we're mimicking the sun, the cold plunges, we're mimicking living in a colder temperature, maybe jumping in the lake, and then we talk about the meat, we talk about why these things, we head towards the primal route. And I that's where I think we should head with this. And I agree with James too, though, that this is just a really difficult one because you can't win. No matter which lane you pick, someone's going to be, you know, but personally, as we're seeing here, everybody's starting to head towards, let's fix our relationship with food. Let's eat healthier primal foods. Let's go. It seems like everybody's going that direction. So I think that's what I think. What do you think, Tony?
I think we should name it the Primal Conference. Just don't let Mark Sesson know about this and all the Primal Blueprint people. But when I'm listening to that story that you guys were talking about, and I was in the room when the person with, I believe it was the type 2 diabetes, asked a question and he got the answer. And I remember you two looking at each other. I'm like, there's an inside joke here or something. Like I didn't understand it, but James and Casey looked at each other like, oh yeah, that's a whole different answer. And my thing with that is like these conferences, they're great. But also you're there to listen and learn, but it's also like you're not working directly with that speaker. They don't know you specifically. They don't know the ins and outs. So it's really hard for them to give you the answer that you want to hear or need to hear. They're going to just be very broad in general because they don't know what your blood work is. They don't know what what your history is, medical history. So everybody's going to be different. And I look at that and I think about, and I'm going to use you, James, like listen to James's story, right? His story, on my podcast, Casey's podcast, whatever, and then future Adrian's podcast, you listen to his story, and if he would have went carnivore harder, and that somebody was on the panel, be like, yeah, just eat more fatty red meat. That's not good. That wasn't good for James, right? And you could speak about it too. But the one thing that he did was he had to pivot a little bit and slowly, he's like adding different things in that are carbohydrates because that's what he needed specifically. And when we go to these conferences and you listen to the speaker, some things might work for you, some might not, but it's really hard for people that have like very individual questions and get individual specific answers when you're in the middle of a Q&A.
Okay, excellent. The other thing I wanted to address is some of the movies that were shown during the conference. There were 3 separate ones, and maybe more, but 3 in particular that stood out. The first one, Brad and Maggie Jones, episode 1 of Cancer Revolution. I've seen it before. We got to watch that. We had Brian Sanders revealing episode 1 of, I don't know what it's going to be called, if it's Peak Human or Sapien or whatever his kind of concept is. Movie that's been in the works for a very long time. Third one I knew nothing about was Healing Humanity, I believe it was called, with, oh boy, now I'm going to forget their names, so I'm not even going to try. Adam and Carrie, I believe, or something. Anyway, they kind of premiered their films. Any comments from you guys on the films that were premiered at the show? Did you like them? Did you not like them? Any general thoughts on any of those?
Sure, I'll go, Casey, because I didn't get to see the last one. I saw the first one on the cancer, and then I obviously saw Food Lies is the name of the series or the presentation from Brian Sanders. And for me, I thought he did a great job. I thought it was great to finally see something coming out from him. I know he talked and teased that for quite some time. So to see the first episode of it was really great. And it definitely left people hungry for more. I was saddened to hear that he didn't have the funding or the backing to really get the rest of the series out. He had hoped it would go to Netflix or something like that, but it would certainly be worth putting the information out that he had there, because there's simply nothing else like it out there in this space, this type of series, and with the guests that he had. So hoping and looking forward to hopefully the rest of that season that he's got. I think he said he had like 8 or 10 episodes in the can ready to go or close to being ready to go, but just was looking for some funding. But yeah, that's my 2 cents on those presentations. It was a nice little break to have those presented. I know Ryan did his during the lunch hour, so it wasn't as well as attended as it possibly could have been because everyone was across at Terry Black's, but a lot of folks stayed and saw. It was great.
Tony?
I want to say, I think that we should all go to those websites and help out because we need that. We need to counteract all the propaganda that's out there on the opposite side and have those. And so I went to the Healing Humanity dinner, and I'm just going to say, I think the best part of all was just the dinners. I think that was my favorite, was getting to sit down with people, hear their stories, hear how they're going, hear how excited they are. That was my favorite. But so Healing Humanity, just like Food Lies, they are also hoping to, first they're going to make a movie and then they're going to make a series. They're hoping, but they need funding because this isn't, there's no big backers for this. Big pharma and big food are not into this. So if you guys could all go to Healing Humanity, that would be awesome. And then I just want to say, I bought the virtual replay. So once that gets released, I'm really excited to see all the speakers. What about you, Tony?
I thought the Food Lies was really great, and I think I mentioned it to Casey when I sat down too. Of it's the way that it's done. I would love like to show that to like the parents at my school. Like, like it's just very good, and with the infographics, and it just as you're watching it, you're like, oh wow, there's like this other aspect of food that I didn't even think about, and they also like touch upon like exercise, not only nutrition but the exercise component, which one of the things they said in the first 5 seconds was like, yeah, you can't walk down the street within like 5 miles and not see 3 or 4 gyms. But yeah, we're the most unhealthy. So I was like, that just resonated with me right away. I was like, oh, this is cool. Healing Humanity was really awesome. I love the way that they're following people. It's real life stories. Yes, there's some science behind there, but it's just like more of like you are connected to the people on the screen. You're like, wow. So those were the two big ones that I really liked. What about you, Casey?
Yeah. So my tricky thing about the Food Lies thing is that it's taken so long to come out, and the crowdfunding has been years and years that money has gone in. To finally see something is great. I wish there would be a little bit more of a trade-off of like, okay, maybe you don't need as much production value, and then you can get the thing done and get it pushed out there. I also felt a lot of sympathy and empathy, I guess, when he was saying like, look, I'm not a filmmaker. It's just two of us. We're trying to get this out. That must be really hard. Like the other people that made the other films are filmmakers, so that's a little bit more in their wheelhouse. So I understand that. I do get a little frustrated that it's taken so long to get anything out at this point. James, you really missed out on that Healing Humanity thing. That was quite special. It was really cool. He put a montage together of all like the experts that he talked about, and like as he was wrapping up his interview, he would say every single time, word for word, it was super funny. Hey, I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you think you'd like come back and help us with this movie? And he would say it to Dr. Eid and Dr. Chafee and Dr. Ovadia, and sure enough, all of them, again, the comment like, not to put you on the spot, but do you think you'd help out? All of them were like, oh, I'd love to help. It would be great. And just hearing the story of, was it John, his name, carnivore in Australia, or not Australia, Alaska, who was 700 pounds, didn't leave his house, like could not get up out of his chair and couldn't really leave his house for like years, and is now on the journey. And to see him, and they went all the way up to Alaska to interview him, and they're going to follow up with him in a year. That was pretty special. That was pretty cool to see.
These stories and these documentaries are why eating meat like this isn't just like some diet. You look and you go, oh, that food is you look at food totally different. And when you see the stories, you just see the healing, and you think about everything totally differently. And so that's why these things help to not just be, it's not just a diet. It's not just a fad. It's like, I want to be healthy and I want to be happy and I want to feel good. So I'm grateful for these people for doing it.
Great point.
And Adrian, I just wanted to touch on something that you said, and Tony talked about my story. And for those listeners who may not know my story, go back and listen to Casey's interviews with me and Tony's interview with me. But the reason that I got in the rough shape, it's an understatement of the year, that I did, is because I watched the propaganda pieces, the films on veganism and plant-based eating, and as many others do, they sort of fall victim to it. And I agree with Adrian that there needs to be some balance in this space. We need more. I know Vinny's done some great documentaries. There's some other great ones out, but compared to the amount of the plant-based eating propaganda pieces, no, we definitely need them in this space. So that's just a comment I wanted to agree with Adrian on.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate that insight. Let's maybe share some like favorite stories as you reflect back on the weekend that we just had. Tell me some of your like favorite moments, favorite stories. I'm going to steal the stage and go first. One of my favorite moments was when Tony got in town. James and I had been hanging out all day. We were at dinner, just hanging out. Tony showed up. Awesome to meet him in person, which was great. We all went to a barbecue joint called Cooper's, based on James's recommendation. That smoked ribeye was incredible. And as we were all sitting there talking, Tony is talking about like how he's been to Austin before. He was staying in some tiny home in Austin. I was like, oh, that's funny. I'm staying in a tiny home. Sure enough, we find out that we are staying in exactly the same spot. Tony stayed there 4 years ago in December of 2020 when his school shut down and he didn't want to get stuck in 20-degree below weather in Chicago. So he bounced, went to Austin, rented this tiny home that I eventually stayed at. The owner remembers you, by the way. She thought it was so funny that you would cook so much meat. She had to like replace the propane for the barbecue in the 2 weeks that you were there. She was very disappointed when she said like, "Hey, invite him over for like a steak. He can come over and hang out." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I think he's got other plans or whatever." She was very disappointed that you didn't come back, which was really funny. The tiny home was tiny, and this was my first introduction into the Incinelette toilet. So if you take the words incinerator and the words toilet and you smash them together, you get Incinelette. And so what you do is you put a filter down into the bowl, you do your business, then you close the lid with a foot pad, you push down, the thing opens up, you hear a plunk as your stuff falls down, and then you push a button, and for 90 minutes, this thing runs, you hear this, and it starts to like heat up your stuff, and it turns it into ash. And the woman who was hosting was very environmentally, worried about like wasting water. Maybe she had concerns about sewage or whatever. This literally turns your stuff into ash. I had never seen one of these before. And I can say like the number one question I've gotten all week as I've been telling my clients about it is, what did that smell like? And I was like, first of all, I'm very lucky that I'm on a 0 fiber carnivore diet because I never went number 2 once. I peed in it like 2 or 3 times. And I would say it basically smells like if you peed on a campfire. It kind of like if you get close to it, it kind of smells like that. Tony, what was your experience with the Incinelette?
Well, you were there for a weekend. You can get by. I was there for 2 weeks. So I had to use the Incinelette for 1s and 2s. And first of all, the host, what's her name again?
Rebecca, I believe.
Rebecca. She was awesome. Every time she had like a dog and like she'd come out, she'd be like, "You're grilling again?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm grilling." And she's like, "Okay." And it was really funny. And I remember just like the shower is like a tin shower and you can like barely wash yourself in there. But I was like, all right, I'm here for 2 weeks. I can't be in Chicago anymore. And this is like the cheapest thing I can find. And it was very unique. The Incinelette toilet, whatever. After a while, you don't even really like notice it, but it does smell like a campfire in there. So it's kind of weird.
Adrian said before the conversation, she was like, what's an Incinelette? We were like, oh, you just wait. We've got some toilet talk. And Adrian said she's always down for some toilet talk. So hope you enjoyed that.
One of my best friends is she's a home birther, a body worker, and I went to her house and she has a composting toilet in her house. And it's a really nice house, but it's an actual composting toilet. Do you guys know? Like
No.
you go potty and you throw some shavings on top of it, and then every once in a while you swap the bucket out. So I'm all about the environmentally friendly people.
Incinerate toilet doesn't look too bad now, does it, Casey?
Yeah, because you don't actually have to take a bucket every once in a while and put it on the pile. But I end up every time I go on one of these vacations, I don't think this is going to end up happening anymore, but I end up staying with someone I've never met. We're in a group together, maybe we've chatted, but we've never met. And I ended up with the coolest woman in the whole entire. There's pictures of her putting Sean Baker in a headlock. She ended up in a whole bunch of people's reels. She's just the life of the party, the sweetest person. This is why I spent like a couple minutes, maybe a minute with each big person, but I spent most of my time with like all the rest of the normal people. And she was just I ended up with the best roommate. And you know how she's also the best roommate? I warned her. I said, I'm really weird. And she goes, it's fine. I'm sure this is, no. I'm doing chronic inflammatory response syndrome protocol and I do coffee enemas. Like I am really weird. And she was like, oh, no big deal. So I have a little poop top for you too, but how about,
Thank you.
I got one more. I want to tell you though, last year, my favorite night of the whole thing was having dinner with James and Sally and a whole bunch of people. Like it was life changing to get to be at that table and like the lighting was perfect and the food looked delicious and the company was awesome and everybody was so happy. And this year I feel like I got to have that like 3 times. That to me, the dinners are the best. But okay, James, what do you got? What's your favorite memory?
Adrian, for those that are listening to this episode and are not watching it on YouTube, your face was priceless as Tony and Casey were talking about this toilet. There's the look on your face. And again, it is one of my favorite moments. I was literally in tears laughing as we shared, and it was a wonderful, like that smoked ribeye from Cooper's. Yes, sitting with Casey and Tony, but watching those two realize that they were staying in the same place and were experiencing the Incinelette or whatever it's called was priceless. I was crying with laughter. And you're absolutely right. It was the dinners, even, not even, but alongside the Ironworks barbecue that we went to, Casey and Tony, that Jake was there, Lisa Wiederman's barbecue. That was really, really great. And I got to sit next to Jake Thomas's mom for the evening, which was fabulous. And to have this discussion with Jake's mom and just talk about my grandmother and her and how she found carnivore through her son and is just thriving now was just, those are the moments that you hold on to. And I agree, Adrian, that dinner, I mean, with Sally, I tell people about that all the time. We had all our friends around that table and we were just talking about everything, oxalates, family, friends, and those are the moments that make everything so special. And yeah, those are definitely my top two moments for sure.
Jake's mom
Tony,
is gorgeous.
she's cool. She was way cool. She was awesome to talk to. Tony, first ever conference. What were some of your favorite memories?
I mean, I'd have to agree with pretty much everybody and just hanging out with the people. I was a little nervous coming in because like I haven't met James in person. I haven't met Casey in person. I haven't met anybody. So I'm thinking like I'm going to go there. I'm going to be by myself. I'm going to be sitting down by myself. And it was great. Like I hung out with you guys the whole weekend. Went to the dinners, got to just talk shop and things. We talked about carnivore, but we talked about life. We talked about everything. And I got to be connected with everybody. I got to meet Adrian and Adrian. So somebody put a message. I got to look back whose it is, but somebody messaged me. They're like, hey, we're having a meetup in Naperville. Are you going to come? And I was like, yeah, if you're inviting me, I will be there. And Naperville's just like outside of Chicago. She's like, Adrian's going to be there. I'm like, no way. And I'm like that. I'm like, I'm for sure going now. So it's just like the connections of people and we are in our silos at home with ourselves in our lives. And then, but we're out here doing the work and we're talking to people and we're reaching people, and just to have these connections with like-minded people and have these conversations was like the biggest highlight, and to hang out with everybody was awesome.
So I guess kind of last question for all of you. I get this from my clients whenever I come back from one of these conferences. Like, what did you learn? And getting back from the collaborative science conference that I went to in March with Dave Feldman in Las Vegas, and we're talking about very specific lean mass hyperresponder cholesterol patterns. It's like, holy smokes, I learned a ton of different things. I would say I probably didn't learn a ton of new information for this one, but that was my favorite part. And whether or not we all decide to go to this specific conference again, or whether all of us just collectively decide like, hey, we're going to Memphis in October. There's not going to be any talks, but we're all just going to get together and hang out and do whatever. Like, I would be just as, I guess, likely to go to something like that as I would to this conference. Any other kind of comments around that? James, let's start with you.
Yeah, I agree with you, Casey. I mean, a lot of the stuff I had heard not only last year, but from talking with our podcast guests and listening to, but I learned quite a bit. And as you know, this presentation was another one that I forgot to mention, was Craig Emmerich's presentation on glucose. I learned a ton that I didn't know before about the details of gluconeogenesis and insulin resistance and glucose and its role. I'd heard a little presentations before, but I just thought he did a tremendous job of putting everything together. And he was so understandable and did a great job of just taking his time and walking people through that. So that was a big one for me. And Tony, what about you?
I'm kind of leaning like towards Casey's answer of a lot of the things like you've mentioned, like we've heard it. It was, I walked away with a couple nuggets of information that I didn't really know. But the biggest thing was getting to meet the different people and the different movers and shakers in this space. There's some people will name drop somebody. I'm like, who is that? And then I find out who that is, like Healing Humanity. I know nothing about that. And like, now I'm like going to be following them and can't wait to see the documentary. And, so that was the big thing, is just meeting some of the guests in person that I've had on my podcast. Like, to literally, I walked up and I saw Eric Reynolds, And he was like the mayor of that whole thing. Like he's just rubbing elbows with everybody. And he just comes up and hugs me. He's like, "What's up, Tony?" And we got to hang out. And I turn around and Jake Thomas is right there. "What's up, Jake?" And like that was the cool part. And I agree with Casey was saying, like, if we all go and like just say, "Hey, we're gonna do this meetup or we're gonna go here," I think I want to look forward to go. I know it's not this September, but next September is Meat Stock. I think that where we get everybody together in a space, a little bit smaller space, and it gets a little bit more intimate, and we can have conversations. That's what I'm looking forward to the most in the future.
Well, hopefully Sean Baker will show up to that one so you can have a rematch of the lift you did. You almost beat the one and only Sean Baker on a lift, Tony.
I feel like that's the only reason I would go back. I can go try to break the record. I got to train a little bit more, but I came close. I got 38 on the bamboo press. There's some questionable people ahead of me, but Robert Sykes got 39. But apparently they had him on a timer. Some other people weren't on a timer, so he got 39 in a minute. I think I took longer than a minute, so mine has asterisks as well. So, but that's I didn't want to bring that up, but thanks for reminding me.
No,
Yeah,
we have to talk about this though, Casey, because Tony had Ben Greenfield, who he's being very modest, who went before him, and yeah, I think Tony, you might have put, and Ben, if you're listening to this, Tony's form was he put you to shame, my brother. So you got to get that form right. You may have had more repetitions, but my brother Tony was crushing it out there.
I appreciate it.
It was so funny to see Tony like going over and attending some of the kettlebell things. And before long, he's like instructing some of the other people on how to do lifts properly. Like that guy is in his natural environment right there. He's in his element for sure. So of course you were going to help anybody who was there doing the workouts with you. It was really cool to see.
I was so excited. Like they had a kettlebell and like within 5 seconds, I was like, "Hey, Casey, like videotape me real quick. I found a kettlebell," and I was doing stuff with kettlebells and I was excited. And I got to meet Squash Fitness is out in Austin. And I got to meet a couple of the trainers that I got to leave on Monday, and I got to like go there and work out in the morning and just like go hang out, work out, say hi to the trainers, and just rub elbows with those kind of people. So it was great. Adrian, what about you?
I am totally in this for the people. Like you guys are my people. I have been a total health nut weirdo probably my entire life. I mean, in high school, I was in like 10 different sports and I was the captain, and I'm just really competitive and I just want to feel my best and be strong. And it's so awesome. Like 11 years ago, I quit drinking, and it was really hard to find people who were like me, who choose not to drink because it doesn't make them feel good. And it's just so nice to be around people who are like, "Listen, that doesn't make me feel good either. What does is like lifting and getting sun." And I'm in it for the people. And I love this conference because it is so many people. And so you get to see all the people, almost all the people, so many people. So that's what's great. And that's why I'll probably come back, just because it draws such a huge crowd. But I do love like the Napervilles, where we're just going to show up, we're going to hike, we're going to eat some meat. There's probably going to be 20 to 50 people, and you really get to know people. And I have to write down what this meat stock is. I got to say, so I'm also this year plan on going to Keto Palooza. I hear that's a really intimate, awesome one. So I'm excited about that. And then I'm really spoiled. I'm going to go to the 2 Crazy Keto Friendship Cruise. So you guys should sign up for that, because cruising together and, all you can eat meat, and there's a track and sun, and I'm just throwing that out there. I'm in it for the people. So
I love that. I love that. Yeah, it's so hard to pick and choose which ones you're going to. And I always like, it's too expensive or too far. Then I start to see the pictures on my social media of all of you guys having a riot. I'm like, damn it, I should have gone. Guys, I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. If we make this a habit and do this again one day, or keep a practice where we're doing this regularly, I would not complain one bit. I have enjoyed every second of this conversation. I really appreciate all of you coming on your days off to kind of talk about this. Let's go around the horn and just tell people where they can go to find you and connect with you and your work. Adrian, why don't you start?
I'm Adrian, spelled the boys' way, Adrian, K Gledhill on Instagram and YouTube.
Tony Pascola. You can find me on Instagram at Tony_Primal Foundations, or you can go to my website, primalfoundations.com.
Excellent. And start on episode 2 of your podcast and work up from there. Is it the way to approach it?
Make sure you listen to the #1 podcast, the first podcast with Casey Ruff.
In all seriousness, I was so honored to be your first guest. I know we had coached, and did some work in the past, but it was such an honor to be on your show, man. I really appreciate it. Same with you, James. Such an honor to be on your show as well. James, where can people go to find you and connect with you and your work?
First of all, I'd like to say I love the idea of us reconnecting in this format. And I think in the interest of the day, we should call it Casey's Primal Panel. There we go.
Wow. Wow. I like it.
So we can have the primal panel discussions or something like that. But yeah, folks can find me at @the_carnivorist on all the social profiles, except for Facebook. I'm not there, or TikTok, but I am on Instagram. I am on Twitter. I am on YouTube at @the_carnivorist. And then obviously Carnivorous Chats on all your podcast listening places, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc.
Excellent. Well, thank you, James. Like I said, we'll tag that in the notes. Guys, thank you so very much for taking the time to do this. It was a magical conversation. I so treasure my friendship with each of you. And yeah, just thank you so very much for taking the time to be on our show today. We really appreciate you all.
Thanks, Casey.
Thank you, Casey.
Thank you guys so much. And this has been another episode of Balanced Body Radio.